but less so on the Epstein files. President Trump is now calling on House Republicans to support the release of the Jeffrey Epstein case files. He made that request, which is a very sudden reversal from his previous position on social media last night, writing that Republicans should vote to release the files because, quote, we have nothing to hide and it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax perpetrated by radical left lunatics. This change of course from the president comes ahead of tomorrow's expected vote on the House floor aimed at forcing the Justice Department to release all of the files. To become law, it would still need to pass in the Senate and be signed by President Trump himself. This turnaround from Trump notably follows a failed pressure campaign to sway Republican lawmakers against pursuing the release of the files. Now, earlier yesterday, Republican Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky signaled there was growing support for the measure among the GOP in the House.
I think we could have a deluge of Republicans. There could be 100 or more. I'm hoping to get a veto-proof majority on this legislation when it comes up for a vote. I am winning this week with Ro Khanna. We're forcing this vote, and it's going to happen. I would remind my Republican colleagues who are deciding how to vote, Donald Trump can protect you in red districts right now by giving you an endorsement. But in 2030, he's not going to be the president, and you will have voted to protect pedophiles if you don't vote to release these files. And the president can't protect you then. This vote, the record of this vote, will last longer than Donald Trump's presidency.
And there's no way Republicans could have voted no on this. There's so many Republicans that would have found themselves on the wrong side of their MAGA base, let alone everybody else. And, you know, we'd said last week, everybody that was saying, oh, there's dead in the Senate. Really? Now, if you're up for election in 2026, Donald Trump had to know they're not going to want to vote against this.
Republicans are starting to look at each other and say, this is going to be a little different. How do we embrace it? And right now, we keep saying the first 6, 7, 8 months of the president's term, Republicans largely in lockstep. But here, because he has gone against sort of the MAGA creed in many ways, we're seeing some in the Republican Party feel like I have a little freedom to disagree.
Right.
And so far, they haven't really paid a price.
Well, you look at Thomas Massie, he hasn't paid a price. We'll see what happens with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I doubt she'll pay a price. I mean, there's always the argument, if you go after Republican presidents from the right, you're safe. Here, these people that are going after Donald Trump are going after him, you know, from the more MAGA-ish base.
Right.
It's not like they're saying, hey, you should actually pay attention to what Jesus says on immigration. No, they're not doing that. They're saying release the Epstein files and stop talking about going to war in Venezuela or Nigeria.
So I want to talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene in just a moment, but on releasing the Epstein files, 2 questions for you, David Rode. First of all, it seems Pam Bondi does exactly what the president tells her to do, and this issue is no different. But also, why couldn't, since she does, and you can tell us more about that, why doesn't he just tell her to release them?
That's the question, and it's such an obvious thing.
It's so easy. Yes, and it's if you just look back months, it's extraordinary how this has been mishandled by this administration.
Why has it?
Because I think Donald Trump himself is afraid of what's going to be released. And to be fair, and we'll talk about this more, but there was a statement way back in July where Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and career FBI people said, we've gone through these papers. There isn't enough evidence to criminally prosecute anyone, but there's a ton of embarrassing material, I'm sure, and that's what Trump is afraid of. But from her saying, oh, I've got the client list on my desk, to Friday, the president posted on Truth Social he wanted these Democrats investigated. We're going to have Bill Clinton and Larry Summers and Reid Hoffman. 4 hours later, the Attorney General of the United States announces that the U.S. Attorney here in Manhattan is going to launch a criminal investigation of those Democrats. That is just extraordinary. In no time in American history do you have an Attorney General essentially announce a criminal investigation hours later because of the president's sort of whims and to distract the public.
David French, I hate to sound like a broken record here, but Republicans in the Senate, Republicans in the House should see this and be absolutely horrified. What happens when a Democratic president comes in, or as I always say, some crackpot independent billionaire with no ideology, just somebody who's power hungry, and comes in and starts talking about the arrest. Boy, we should arrest Republicans. And then an attorney general is placed in there, somebody who maybe worked for this tech lord's, company, and he immediately starts saying, okay, I'm going to go after and start arresting Republicans. Where are the Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee calling this out, not for the sake of Democrats,
Right.
but for the sake of themselves and for the sake of Republicans 3 years from now? This is so unbelievably reckless and so
Self-destructive.
unbelievably un-American.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a movement that is ruling as if it's never going to lose power. This is a movement that is ruling as if all of the precedents it sets will only apply to the other side. And that is an incredibly dangerous assumption. We're going to have an election in 2028. And if the Republicans succeed in remaking the presidency, and Republicans in Congress allow the remaking of the presidency, that's going to make every president we have from this point forward more dangerous than the president that preceded them, because they're just going to become more and more and more powerful. So we're at a moment here, I think, Joe, where the American constitutional order needs to reassert itself. And that constitutional order is supposed to put Congress first amongst the branches, not uncheckable. Congress can still be checked, but it's Article 1 for a reason. But right now it's as if it doesn't exist, as if it's handing everything over to a president, and as if they think that that president will always be hospitable to them, that president is always going to be supporting them. No, when you set these precedents, when you allow a president to get this powerful, you can't control what comes after. It is so short-sighted, and it's remarkably dangerous.
And we're joined now by a member of the House Oversight Committee, Democratic Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury of New Mexico. Congresswoman, thanks for taking the time. You've said that this reversal shows President Trump is losing control of this narrative. Do you see this friction between Trump and House Republicans lasting beyond tomorrow's vote?
I don't know. I think time will tell. I completely agree with what Ali just said. This is clearly a jujitsu move by the president in his continued cover-up of these files. I think it's important for people to understand that we have already subpoenaed these files. He is already under a legal obligation to produce these files to Congress and has not complied with the subpoena. And he has spent months trying to cover up this case. He has spent months trying to bully and pressure his members of the Republican Party to try to bury this case, to try to do everything in his power to keep these files from seeing the light of day. And now he's not saying he's going to release the files, which he is already obligated to do. He is merely saying to Republicans, okay, you can vote for this discharge petition. But we want to be clear. We have already subpoenaed the files. He is already legally required to release the files, and he is not complying with the law.
How many Republicans do you think will join Democrats on this discharge petition vote now that the president has given them a go-ahead?
I mean, it's hard to say. I think the fact that, the speaker is expediting the vote and the president released a statement last night essentially saying go ahead and vote for it could mean the entire caucus. And if they do, that means that they get the political cover that the president wants. And the president even says in his statement he wants to move on. So let me say this to you, Donald Trump. We are not moving on. This investigation will continue. We will continue to seek justice for the victims. We will continue to subpoena and ask for these files, and we will continue to investigate the criminal wrongdoing that was never prosecuted by the Department of Justice.
Trump is trying to be like a ninja, attempting to pull off some brilliant tactical move, and it's failing on both fronts simultaneously. He is failing at his last-ditch effort. One, he continues to try and say, well, actually, we're going to investigate, not really me, but we're going to investigate Bill Clinton. We're going to investigate all of these Democratic people who may or may not have also had these relationships with Epstein. And look, I've always said, and most Democrats, progressives, and socialists are saying, yeah, don't just investigate Trump. The whole point of this isn't even really just about Trump. It's also about justice for the survivors and the fact that it couldn't have just been Jeff and Ghislaine, or even Donald. It couldn't be just those three. It had to be more people. And yes, if it takes down a Democrat, it takes down a Democrat. I think Democrats, Correct me if I'm wrong, and I think you guys writing in the comments have been incredibly consistent on that. If Bill did what some people think Epstein's friends did, he deserves the harshest consequences. But the problem with Trump is that his supporters don't actually believe that. They want it to be one-sided. Also, by bringing up the Bill Clinton stuff about him and Epstein, you instantly reignite the rumors that we've been talking about for the last couple of days. Again, rumors are rumors. I do want to make that clear. There's no proof that Bill is Bubba, and that Bubba and Trump did what Bubba and Trump were said to have done, but lots of people are still talking about it, and a lot of people believe it. Go on social media. A lot of people, millions of people, tens of millions probably, believe it. There's a reason why it's such a high search trend in the last 24, 48, or 72 hours. And to be clear, all Trump is doing is making that connection for people. In addition to the fact that by him saying it's time to release the files, people think that's Trump trying to manufacture a narrative where he's going to look like the hero for opening them. That might have worked back in March, April, or May, but now it's the utter stench of desperation.